And this time I will not forget Gary. Gary is next on the agenda, and we all appreciate Gary's words. So Gary, you have the floor.
Well, Steve, thanks for mentioning Vernon Jordan, because I was going to mention that too, and he was a real civil rights icon. I can't resist mentioning the less than distinguished senator from Texas, Ted Cancun Cruz. And we all know the story of he flies off with his family to escape the crisis that they're having in Texas. And he said he was just trying to be a good father. Somebody said that most parents take their kids to the bus. Ted threw his kids under the bus. So in case you missed it, there was a lengthy article about Andy Biggs in the Sunday's Arizona Republic. In 1993, as you might recall, Biggs' life changed dramatically, and not so good for us, when he won the $10 million American Family Sweepstakes and then could dedicate himself to being a politician. During the times Biggs served in the state legislature, he was a major supporter of Senate Bill 1070, the infamous immigration enforcement law, and he was the main Republican opponent of Medicaid expansion, along with holding up for months a vote to renew the state's federally funded health insurance program for 30,000 low-income children. I hope people remember that. At the time, Arizona was the only state in the nation that did not offer such a program. In 2016, Representative Matt Salmon announced that he would not be running for re-election and endorsed Biggs. Biggs ran in a four-person primary, and he won by 16 votes. 16 votes. Nearly 600 ballots were never counted because the county's voting machines detected what they considered marks for multiple candidates. Kind of ironic, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And this very conservative district Biggs went on to win the general election. But my point is, think about whenever people talk about that their vote doesn't matter, we got Andy Biggs thanks to 16 votes. We now have a congressman who thinks masks are not effective to prevent the spread of COVID. He doesn't believe in Fauci or science. He believes the election was stolen from Trump. And he's also implicated in what happened on January 6th. Arizona Republican Congressman Paul Gosar spoke last Friday at a conference organized by a white nationalist. He made an appearance at the far-right America First Political Action Committee, and on Saturday at the Conservative Political Action Committee. It's hard to believe that there actually is a group to the right of the Conservative Political Action Committee. Gosar skipped voting in person on the coronavirus relief package and voted by proxy because he said he was concerned about the pandemic. But meanwhile, he didn't have any problem flying to Florida and speaking to those groups. And Gosar in the past he's a real hypocrite, had been critical of those voting by proxy. The New York Times on Sunday, February 28th, reported there are now 253 bills in 43 states that seek to tighten voting rules. Arizona was, of course, mentioned as one of those states, particularly where the Republican Party controls the legislature and the governor's office. There are 23 states like that, including Arizona. 7 days after it was rejected by the full Arizona Senate, Republican Senator Michelle Ugenta-Rita's Senate Bill 1485 came before the Senate Appropriations Committee. It had no business going before an Appropriations Committee to remove voters from the permanent early voting list if they do not vote in 4 consecutive primary and general elections. Voting along the party lines, the bill passed 6-4. In addition to discouraging Republicans and Democrats from voting by having them have to re-register, think about the impact on the 33% of people who are independent voters who often do not vote in primaries. The Appropriations Committee also voted to shorten the period of voting by mail from 27 to 22 days. Senate Bill 1593 would require all mail-in ballots to be postmarked no later than the Thursday before Election Day. We have a conscious effort to confuse, discourage, essentially keep people from voting. The highlight, though, is Republican Senator David Gowan initiated a discussion of a proposed constitutional amendment that would allow the legislature to overturn presidential election results. Gowan backed off and said he only wanted to spur a discussion. The Arizona Senate passed on a 16-14 vote a massive expansion of the school voucher program, the Empowerment Scholarship Account, just 2 years after voters had repealed by almost a 2-to-1 margin a similar proposal. Republican Senator Paul Boyer of Phoenix said the bill was primarily about helping students who are stuck in failing schools. But students in failing schools can already use the ESA program. This is all bunk. We've talked about this before. It provides about $5,000 of the cost of a yearly $12,000 to $15,000 to attend a private school. The people that use this are upper middle class and wealthy people. It's just a tax subsidy for them. I was going to talk about the Census Bureau, but we already talked about that. And I think AJ is going to get at it in terms of how the results of that have been delayed. So folks, there's just a lot going on, and we need to spend 2021 prepping for a very hectic and important 2022 election year. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Gary.
Sure.
And we have some great guest speakers lined up for you tonight. Of course, we always have Jennifer. I don't ever want to take that for granted that Jennifer's going to be speaking to us tonight. And we have Matt Orlando, our city councilman, is here tonight to speak to us. So, and that we have Nikita Ross from Resilient Me, and we have Howard Epstein from the Arizona Housing Fund. And I'm going to throw it to Carol now to introduce our speakers.
Howard Epstein, who is a executive with Bank of America, and who has launched the Arizona Housing Fund here in 2019 to provide grants to Arizona nonprofits to build permanent, supportive, low-income and working poor housing. I think most of us realize with this pandemic, I mean, it was an issue before, but it's gotten even worse now with the pandemic, just how badly we are in need of housing, whether it's workforce housing or housing for the people that are affected mostly as low-income people, disability, and so forth. And I thought this was an interesting concept that Howard has presented because they are a private sector solution to the housing issues here in Arizona. And they do help to give grants to people who will build nonprofits who are building housing for their clientele or their people. And so I wanted him to come on and talk about this because, again, many times we look to just government to solve the solutions. This is a private sector area that's willing to support nonprofits here across the state. So with that, Howard, if you are available and ready, we will go ahead and get your slide presentation put up, and we will let you present to us. So Mr. Howard Epstein from the Arizona Housing Fund.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you to LD 17 Democrats for letting me present this today. This is the slide presentation I'm going to give you. I'm going to fly through it because I know I have about 10 minutes, and I'm going to try to leave a few minutes for questions. What I'm going to try to answer for you tonight is 4 basic questions. How bad is our homeless problem? Why do we have a homeless problem? What's the most responsible solution? And then tell you about the Arizona Housing Fund. How does it work? So, by the way, before you can see here, this is our website. And if you please check that out. And if you are interested in this fund and you want to follow us, you are welcome to on whatever your platform of choice is. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So if you can go to the first slide, please. So I'm going to here's a few stats for you that kind of tell the picture of how bad is our problem. So these are not great stats. Arizona has the 3rd most severe housing shortage in the country. For every 100 extremely low income people in the state, there's only 25 potential places they could live. That's from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. Right now in our state, we have 10,000 people living both sheltered and unsheltered who have their name on a list that want permanent housing. They could either be in transitional or temporary shelters, or worse, living unsheltered in their car or street. 37% of our homeless are families. And then almost 20, this is pre-pandemic. We think it's worse now. 25,000 Arizona public schools students experienced homelessness in 2018, a stat that's not up here, which should just be unacceptable to everyone, is that in 2020, 500 homeless people passed away. So it's just not something that should be acceptable to anyone. Let's go to the next slide, please. Why do we have a growing homeless problem? So first and foremost, the vulnerable populations of virtually every group are growing every day. Elderly, veterans, mentally ill, disabled, people in crisis, those experiencing addiction, minimum and low wage workers, people escaping violence. Probably the fastest growing group in this is the elderly. And in a very sad another stat, the answer to housing by most cities, counties, and states and the federal government is to issue vouchers. Vouchers are like coupons that people can use to stay at an apartment building or a permanent supportive housing project. They're really difficult for apartments to take because they only pay like $500 a month or something. So I just heard that there's over 400 veterans with vouchers and they can't use them. So that's, again, just another unacceptable situation. So that the next bullet there is why do we have a problem? Or every emergency shelter, temporary shelter, and transitional shelter is full. So if the permanent supportive housing and low income housing properties that are out there are full, there's no place for those people in temporary shelters or transitional shelters to move to. And if the temporary and emergency shelters are full, there's no place for the people living unsheltered to move to. So we're stuck. The continuum of housing care is stuck. We have a growing population of low-income workers. If you're a minimum wage worker and you work 30 to 40 hours a week, your take home might be a little over $1,000. So even if you could find rent for $500 a month, that leaves you $15 a day for food. The problem is it's growing, and it's going to get worse every year going forward until we do something about it. Next slide, please. So again, the solution, and it's, the reasons why people become homeless are complex, but the solution really isn't that complex. It's just math. We need more permanent supportive housing units, more low-income housing units. The Arizona Housing Fund, was set up just to help for that reason. We issue equity grants to the nonprofits who build and operate these kinds of projects, permanent supportive low-income housing. We've only been open for about a year and a half, but we've actually already grown past $500,000 in donations, and we've got some really big announcements coming up. They're going to really push us over the top. So we hope to make our first grant actually this year. Next slide, please. So this might be the most important slide. These are most of the nonprofits in our state that we advocate for. So these, I think there's 19 or so on this page. These are the groups, the nonprofit agencies who do just what we're talking about. They own, manage, operate permanent housing with supportive services, and some are very specialized. Save the Family, You Mom Just Do Families, U.S. Veterans Initiatives for Veterans. These are iconic names: Foundation for Senior Living, Catholic Charities, A New Leaf. One of the things I do, I've been battling the homeless problem in our communities for 25 years, and one of the things I do is I travel around the country and look at how other communities and nonprofits handle the situation. And I can tell you that we can be very proud of our nonprofits in the state of Arizona because they do it as well as anyone. These are the groups that provide this kind of housing. What they need is more money. It's just math. We have 10,000 people who want housing. They can't get it. We need to get units out there. And I can tell you, again, looking at all these groups, when you visit their facilities, it looks like any other apartment building. People pay rent, people sign leases, people follow rules. What's different is there's supportive services available inside the project. When you walk into one of these facilities, it feels more like a freshman dormitory. There's always somebody greeting you there. And like I said, you'll have supportive services on site. Next slide, please. So again, how do we generate revenue? We generate revenue from traditional donations from individuals and families and foundations, et cetera. But our creative approach that's really taking off is what's called our escrow donation program. So it's similar to when you were grocery shopping and you at the checkout register and they ask you if you want to donate $1 to whatever their charity is, Phoenix Children's Hospital or Arizona Humane Society. That's what we do, except it's when somebody buys or sells a home, when somebody refinances a home, anything that goes through an escrow company, a title company. We ask people who buy or sell homes and brokers to donate $25. And it's really taking off. No other state does anything like this. It's voluntary. It's not a tax or a fee. It's just when people are asked, we're finding that people like to do it. Next slide, please. Again, here's a little more on the escrow donation program. We're supported by the Arizona Association of Realtors, and every realtor who's in our state is being presented with the form to present to their clients for this escrow donation. And again, I can tell you, it's every day we're seeing more companies sign up to participate in it. And rarely do we see a buyer or seller, whether they're buying or selling a $100,000 home or $1 million home, that won't donate $25 to help our vulnerable citizens. Next slide, please. I'm going to we're working with the apartment community as well. They're coming up with a program. I won't talk about that here. Next slide, please. I'll close here. I just got a couple of minutes. Next slide, please. So our fund is held at the Arizona Community Foundation. The ACF is the largest philanthropic organization in the Southwest for donor advised funds. Because our fund is held at the ACF and we have no staff, we are that rare charitable event where 100 cents of every dollar that we collect goes to the cause, goes to these nonprofits. Any costs associated with our fund is picked up by a generous donor. Next slide, please. Okay, I think I've pretty much covered this. You can see our advisory committee. It's 6 people who have decades of experience in both housing and homelessness issues. And those are the people who will be working the grant cycles for those nonprofits. Next slide, please. I apologize for going so fast here. This is what a typical grant might look like. Let's say UMOM wants to build an 80-unit project. It's going to cost $10 million. They've raised $2 million in private donations and secured a $7 million below or no interest rate loan. They need $1 million to complete the package. That's where our fund could come in and provide the $1 million grant. Next slide, please. So our goal over the next 10 to 15 years is to raise $100 million. I'd like to model this after the PetSmart charities. For any of you who have ever shopped at PetSmart, when you check out, they ask if you want to donate to their PetSmart charities. In 25 years, they've raised over $400 million that they've distributed to various pet charities around the country. And I look at that and think, why can't we do that for our own vulnerable citizens in the state of Arizona? Next slide, please. I got 1 minute. So these are some of our community partners. I'll just keep asking you to flip this slide. Next slide, just so you can see some of the groups who are partnering with us and donating. Next slide, please. And by the way, again, this presentation is actually on our website. If you're interested, we have all kinds of collateral material there. Next slide, please. Again, you'll see all the groups that are working with us to raise revenue and raise awareness. Next slide, please. And then finally, just in summary, what makes this unique? It is private sector. This is not the government. Government has to do more. We're trying to fill in the gaps. It's voluntary. It's through philanthropic donations And finally, like I said, it's all about building new affordable supportive housing for our state, which we desperately need. I think that my time is up. That concludes my brief presentation, and Carol, if you, or to anybody, I'll open it up for questions.
Sorry, I was on mute. We can take one or two questions. So if you are willing to speak, go ahead and raise your hand and ask your question. If you are not one who likes to speak in public, put your question in the chat for Howard, please. Any questions? I'll give people a moment to type. I'm not the fastest typist either, so.
Well, I just, while people
okay.
are,
I think that,
go ahead. I was just going to say,
go ahead, Steve.
While we're waiting for any questions, I just wanted to thank Howard for the work that he's doing, because I do know that there's a gap there that is not being filled, and it looks like you're definitely on your way to helping that situation. So
I do have two questions. Okay. One question came in. It says, do you buy existing properties or do you just fund the building of new ones?
That's a good question. So again, it's the nonprofits. We're a fund that generates equity grants, but I will tell you, because I'm also board chairman of a nonprofit who actually does build permanent supportive housing, it can either be ground up, or more often than not, it's buying an existing dilapidated apartment building, fixing it up and repurposing it for permanent supportive housing. So it can either be, when I say new, it just means new inventory for this, serving this purpose. It doesn't have to be brand new ground up construction. Another thing some of these groups looking at are, motels that have been basically shut down or abandoned, to turn them into permanent supportive housing. So new meaning new to the market, not necessarily brand new construction. That's a good question. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have another question here about how can we as individuals directly contribute to your efforts? Do you need volunteers for anything?
Thank you for that question. So one is, if you're interested in donating, if you go to our website, the very first thing you'll see on our page, at our website is a donate now button. It takes probably 30 seconds to donate. We don't really have volunteers per se, other than people getting out and encouraging the community to donate, for realtors to donate and sign up for the program. Again, so if you're interested in volunteering for this, the homeless and housing cause, that list of nonprofit agencies who serve that population, which again you can find on our website, they do take volunteers to actually go to their and work with their residents. So if you're interested though in donating, again, you can visit our website.
Is this eligible for the any of the Arizona tax credits?
It isn't a tax credit. It's a tax deduction as a charity, but it's not eligible for the Arizona tax credit. Not yet, at least.
Okay. And I have one other question. I think I'll wrap these up into two. It is in regards to buyers and sellers who, then at the escrow will fund like you said, the $25. Realtors, do realtors sign up to contribute? Do they participate in the program? So outside of the buyer and seller, the realtors, are they involved?
Yeah, right now, actually, our greatest donors have been the realtors themselves. While they present it to their buyers and sellers, some buyers, some sellers donate, some don't. Some realtors don't particularly yet even ask clients, but realtors in general have been the most philanthropic group, because they all want to be part of this solution, and they view each transaction they do, if they can donate $25, they really feel like they're helping. So we have some real estate companies. There's a company in Phoenix called North & Co. They're actually, through just their broker donations, their agents that work there, they're up to about $5,000 a month donating to the Arizona Housing Fund. So I think you're seeing a real all hands on deck approach by the residential realtor community who deals in this industry of providing housing. And they feel compelled to show leadership on this issue, and we're really proud of them.
Great.
Okay. Well, thank you, Howard, very much. And if anybody has any other questions, please, you can send them to me. I'll get them to Howard and get you an answer back. But we really appreciate you shining the light on what's going on in our communities and the need that we need to pay attention to, because unfortunately it's only going to get worse as we skyrocket in those wonderful real estate prices.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Stay healthy. Have a good year.
All right, you too. Thank you. Okay, so as I said, Nikita Ross, who is going to be here tonight to speak about her nonprofit, which is really an effort to help foster children get prepared for aging out of the foster care system. Unfortunately, her daughter was sick and she had to leave, so I will reschedule her. So next on the agenda will be Jennifer Pawlik, our own Jennifer Pawlik, our Arizona House representative from LD 17. And I can only ask her to update us on the Hunger Games down at the legislature. Because it seems like there's nothing but bad bills. Maybe there's some good ones, but we hear more about what's being taken away than being what's given. So Jennifer, it's all yours. And Monroe is our timekeeper. He'll keep you honest to the time allotment.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight to get a little bit of insight on what's been going on. I wanted to really briefly touch on a couple of issues and then I'll jump into the legislature. If you were not aware, today 2 election issues from Arizona were heard at the Supreme Court. So the first has to do with what the other side calls ballot harvesting. And that's basically when you take somebody else's ballot and run it to the mailbox for them. And then the other one is when you are voting and it's not the right precinct, should they be allowed to toss your ballot? So know that the hearing was held today and we're not expecting to have a judgment on that until later in the year, maybe summertime, but I did want to call that to your attention so you can look up an article on it. Friday, the judge in Arizona decided that the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors would have to turn over the 2.1 million ballots from the presidential election in November to the Arizona Senate. So what we are suggesting is that if you don't like that, you might reach out to our supervisor, who is Jack Sellers, and let him know that you think he should appeal that decision. So if maybe Sheldon can type in the chat box, his email is Sellers, SELLERS J @mail.maricopa.gov. And if we don't get that typed in, I'll do it after I speak. And then the last thing that I wanted to call to your attention is yesterday, the governor changed the COVID-19 vaccinations once again. So now it seems like it's moving into an age-based situation. So for those of you who are less than 65, you might be cheering and going, hip, hip, hooray, it's my turn now. From what I understand, the appointments that were available today are full. So keep trying, people cancel. If you need a phone number, I'll again put that in the box, but the phone number you can call if the computer's not working is 1-844-542-8201. And then especially for Cody, because I appreciate you reaching out on this issue today, I did hear back from the governor's office and they said what the plan is right now is that they're going by decades. So every time they get a group of people 55% or more vaccinated, then they'll reduce the age by a decade. So they're saying that the reason they did this is because it was informed by data that showed 90% of Arizona death from COVID-19 has been among those ages 55 and older. So that was in an email, and Cody, I'm going to reach back out and see if I can get a phone call with her so we can make sure that people who have medical issues can get a vaccine. It's important. Okay, so now moving on to the legislature. As you will recall, I have 2 committees. I'm on the Education Committee as the ranking member, and then I'm on Government and Elections. So in education, I'll start with the bad bills, and then I'll move on to some good news. So one bill that is moving tomorrow, we'll have it in Cal, so that's the debate. It has to do with requiring the Pledge of Allegiance. So right now, state statute said that students may participate in the Pledge of Allegiance, and this will require students K through 4 to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and it will require students from 4th grade through 12th grade to participate in a moment of silence. So there are a lot of issues with that, and I imagine it's going to be a lively debate. So if you feel like watching that tomorrow, it'll be about 10 o'clock in the morning when we start that business. There is another bill, it's 2421, and it has to do with distance learning. So right now, what happens is we have some charter schools who provide distance learning, and they're always online. And district schools have rules about taking those courses, and oftentimes they'll make the students take an exam before they accept the credits from those programs. And this distance learning bill would open up online learning across the state. So a student who attends, say, Chandler High, and they take their 6 classes at Chandler High, in the summertime, they could take 2 classes at an online school anywhere in the state, and then some of that funding would be taken away from Chandler High to pay for their summer school classes, and then regardless of the quality of the class, Chandler High School would have to take the credits. So that's one that I'm very strongly opposed to, but we may be talking about that very soon as well. There's one that is on 3rd read tomorrow that has to do with the governing boards. And it started out a lot worse than it is. So now all it includes, because everything else has been stripped, the only thing that it includes is if we wish to recall governing board members, we can use equal. Never mind that they can't use equal or the online signatures to get on the ballot, but we'll be able to use it to get school board members off. So now the happy news from the Education Committee is we're hearing Democratic bills. And so that you can understand what a big deal this is, my first year at the legislature in 2019, we heard 74 bills, and only 6 of those 74 were Democratic bills. Last year we finished early, but somehow we heard 78 bills in committee, and 7 of the bills were Democratic ones. This year so far, we've heard 53 bills and 14 have been Democratic bills. So I give some of that credit to Representative Udall, who's chairing the committee. But the other thing that's super is I get to be there when we are setting the agenda. And after I meet with the other Democrats, I can tell her this one's not going to go over well. And there have been a couple of bills that have been pulled off because she won't have the votes to pass them. So know that that is something that's working well. And then I wanted to let you know also that the bad bill that Gary talked about earlier, 1452, the voucher bill, it will not be assigned to House Education, probably because Mrs. Udall will not hear it. So instead it has been assigned to the Ways and Means Committee. So your contact there will be our neighbor in District 18, Mitzi Epstein. She's the ranking member on that committee, and I know she will work hard to do her best to stop that bill. So then my other committee is Government and Elections, and you can only imagine how much fun that one is. So all of the bills that I have listed, we will be discussing tomorrow, either in the COW, Committee of the Whole, which is on the floor of the debate, or during 3rd read, which means we're voting on them tomorrow. So the first one is 2569. That has to do with private funding. And initially, to just hear private funding, you might think, what? We can't have private funding in our elections. However, this is what I want to say to you. We do not do a very good job at providing our elections officials with the money they need to run the elections. So there are private groups that offer grants to help the counties run their elections efficiently. What we learned during our committee hearing is that the grants were spread out both toward the Democratic leaning counties and the Republican leaning counties. It didn't change the election. they ran their elections using this money. So just know that that's out there. We also have 2723, which deals with campaign finance laws. And what this would do is right now, say there are 5 of you and you're at a house party, you each give me $5 in an envelope and you don't put your name on it. I can lump all that money together and I can log it on the campaign finance system and say I received $25 at an event and put nobody's name in there. Well, this would raise that aggregate amount to $200. So any money received up to $200 would not have to be listed by donor's name. And I'm absolutely 100% against this. I will list every single dollar by name because I think that we need to be transparent. So know that that is coming tomorrow. We also have 2373, which has to do with voter registration. So if a group of people is doing voter registration, if they register more than 10 people, then they have to have a special identification number that they have to put on all those voter registration forms. So we don't think that that's necessary, and there's a good group of us who will not be supporting that. 2554 is a striker. And if you're not familiar with that word, what it means is they strike the language of the bill and they put something else in its place. So this striker would require that any party representatives watching over the election must be a resident of Arizona. So again, initially you might think, well, yeah, that's a good idea. But what I learned with this is we're talking about the lawyers, the most highly trained individuals. So if we have somebody who's going to be overseeing it, they often have a background in law and they will be highly trained in Arizona law before they come in. So if somebody is, well, let me put it this way. The violation that goes with this bill is a Class 6 felony. So it's adding a criminal penalty, and you have to be from Arizona only. So there are problems with that one. 2811 would prohibit same-day registration. We don't have that in Arizona, but a lot of the progressive groups talk about how it would be a great idea. This would prohibit that from happening. And then last of all, there is 2840. This is one we saw a couple of years ago, and this is misconduct involving weapons. It would allow loaded or unloaded firearms to be on school grounds, have to be kept in the vehicle, and the vehicle is supposed to be locked. So those are some of the bad bills that I will be dealing with tomorrow. Also coming up on the cow, which means we may vote on it tomorrow, we have what we talked about earlier in the meeting where it's 2770, where businesses would be exempt from requiring masks. So business owners could say it's okay to not wear a mask in their place of work. Also, I've received a number of emails from people about 2248, which basically strips the Corporation Commission from their, I guess, their ability to make laws regarding clean energy and setting the rates. So that's another one that's really, really awful. So I know we're getting right to the end, and I'm going to leave you with 2 good bills. They're my bills. So tomorrow on the cow, I have my very first bill that's going to be on the floor. It's 2828, and that is remote online notaries. It came to me from a constituent. He had an issue where the portal they were using is $10 a signature, and the cap that he was allowed to charge is $10. So I worked with Mr. Winninger. We got it all adjusted. He heard it in his committee, and tomorrow it will go on floor. If you have a passion for gifted education like I do, my gifted bill made it through the education committee, but it did not get a hearing in appropriations. So we're asking people to send an email to Representative Cobb. And I'll put her email in the chat and ask her to add it to the budget. So that was a lot of information. I'm sure your head is probably starting to explode. So welcome to just a little bite of what's going on at the legislature.
Thank you, Jennifer. I don't know if anybody has a couple of questions for Jennifer before she takes off and leaves. Again, if you do not like asking a question, you can put it in the chat. I'll be happy to ask it for you. Or if you want to unmute yourself and ask her, that would be just fine too.
Hey, Jennifer, this is Edgar. I had a quick question about the elections. I know that there was a big stink about the vote center model that we used. Is there anything you guys are going to do to address that? Because moving forward, they were going to try to go back to the precincts model, but that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense given all the new equipment we bought for the vote centers.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And there's a bill that I did not write down the number, which only means we're not hearing it tomorrow, that talks about that, where they're trying to go away from the voting center model, which is a shame because it works so well. They want to be able to hand count by precinct. And if you have a voting center, that would make it that much harder.
No, I understand that, but hasn't Flagstaff been using the vote center model for a long time already?
Yes, and Flagstaff's not the only one. There are a couple of different counties who've been using it for a long time, and it really works for them.
Okay.
So I know it's frustrating, and I would say reach out to the representatives on the other side of the aisle and let them know. Because those of us who are on the aisle with me, we're all voting together.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Would there be,
Jennifer,
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I confirm that the gifted bill that you wanted folks to email Hobbs about is the 2828?
No, that one is the notary bill.
Okay.
The bill is 2418.
2418. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Missed that.
So it might depend on a few things. I don't know if you have like a specific answer for this, but if we move back to like the precinct model, would it be like one vote center in one precinct that you would have to go to in order to vote? Like how exactly would that be set up?
That's exactly how that would be set up.
And it makes it harder for people if they don't know what precinct they're in. And if they go outside of that precinct and they vote in the wrong precinct, it becomes a problem. With the voting centers, it was not an issue, and it was more convenient to people as they were traveling to and from work during hours which they may not be able to get back to their precinct in which to vote. So, you know, when you've got something that works, why not screw it up, you know?
I mean, just the amount of resources that it takes to put a voting place in every single precinct, and the costs, and it's just ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and can you imagine in this pandemic if we would have needed one for every precinct? They didn't have enough people at the polls the way it was with the voter centers.
Yeah,
we might not have been able to even carry on much of an election. So it's just, you know, we know where it is. It's just ridiculous. So anyway, well, thank you, Jennifer, very much. And a couple of people real quickly, because we got to keep moving on. Kathy, real quickly.
Jennifer, what about your dyslexia bill? Didn't you have a dyslexia?
I sure did. And I won't get into a whole lot of details, but there were issues with one of the stakeholder groups. So I pulled it back for more work. And we did not come to consensus. There are a couple of bills still moving in the Senate. And the closest one to what I wanted was 1403, which is a Boyer bill.
And so now we're going to move on. We have given Matt Orlando, who is our Chandler City Council person, to come down and talk to us. He has 5 minutes to give us an update on what's going on in the city of Chandler, anything that we need to know, anything we can help him with. And so Matt, if you're on, go ahead and take it away and watch for Monroe. He's your timekeeper. And we can take a question or two in the chat if people want to put it in there as we go along. I'll be happy to ask the questions for you. Matt?
All right. Thank you. So unlike Jennifer, poor Jennifer, that's dealing with everything but COVID, my number one issue this year has been COVID. I've worked with the firefighters this year. We've inoculated over 600 Chandler employees, from librarians to police officers to firefighters. We put up some mobile clinics. We've also inoculated over 100 seniors that are in our public housing. And I'm working with the Ascend, which is a local organization, to get 160 of their most vulnerable folks that are actually homebound, get them vaccinations in their arms. And then I'm working with our fire and our city manager to get a mobile unit so we can actually go to areas and get those folks that can't, the aged folks, who are the folks that can't get online. That's been my top goal, and it will continue to be my top goal until we eradicate this virus. Real quickly on CARES dollars, we received about $30 million. About 10 million of that went to support small businesses. 6 million went to our most vulnerable, including some of the homeless, to pay utilities and rentals. About 8 million went for our city infrastructure. We realized we had some short areas that we need to do for mobile, for personnel working at home, as well as supporting our business and our community. Our budget, unlike other communities throughout the United States, we're actually up this year about 5% over last year. Our holiday sales are up 15% from last year. So good news there. I only say that, like I said, because a lot of other communities are in the red. Go forward. I'll talk a little bit about workforce housing. That's still an issue. It's dear to me. I know Odie must have spoken at another meeting this week and to talk to the whole council about that. I'll be honest with you, there's council members that are just not on board. They believe that, you know, it's a privilege to live in Chandler and you need to pay for that privilege. And I keep telling them, we want everyone to be able to afford to work in Chandler. And we need to make those type of arrangements. But we'll work that one. Let's see here. Police and fire. That is an issue I ran on, as you know, 2 years ago. Many of you knows. And we are still short. We're short detectives. We're short criminal investigators. We're short of domestic violence. I want to put together a domestic violent unit to be able to support our police officers. There's a subcommittee that is in 2 weeks, and I'll be proposing a agenda item to be able to look at the manning documents to be able to beef those up. Finally, well, a couple more things. We have a bond election this year, about 273 million bond. We're asking the voters to approve. Police and fire, parks and recreation, facilities, and as well as streets, obviously. You gotta have streets. And then the other issue, I'm working on a sustainability plan, a strategy. That kind of fell off when I was on the council last time. I'm bringing that forward with a couple of the council members. It's important that we have, you know, objective, whether it's being carbon neutral by 2020, 2040, 2050. Many other cities have it. We don't. Again, I'm still dealing with some individuals that don't believe in climate change, don't believe in sustainability. So Jennifer, I'm not too far off from what you're dealing with. So, but I'm working hard at it. They're trying to outmaneuver me, but I've been around a long time and I'm working that issue. So we'll get through that. You know, we want to look at actually putting the municipal fleet being an all electrical vehicle. So we've got a bunch of things on the plate. We've been having all new multifamily units have electric vehicle chargers as a mandatory requirement. We're looking at some waste diversion where, you know, and water. We got some great water ideas for storage of our own water in Chandler instead of credits. So we're doing a lot of stuff in Chandler and we're keeping busy. So I think I got a couple more minutes. Was that quick?
Just a compliment for Matt to show up. As one of our previous chairs said, we often only see the nonpartisan candidates show up when they want us to vote for them. And it's nice for you to show up and follow up. Very much appreciated.
You know, thank you, Gary. I wish I could be at more of them. I apologize. It's Monday's a tough night, though, as you know. So, but I appreciate you guys. Or Tuesday nights, excuse me, are tough nights, but I appreciate it. So good things are happening in Chandler. I'm trying to turn this ship around. OD Harris has been a godsend. I think Christine Ellis is getting in there. They both rolled up their sleeves. They're asking a lot of questions. They're challenging status quo. And I'm telling you, I am rejuvenated.
Good. I have one other question in the chat. Somebody asked about, can we help you in any way and in the environmentally minded volunteers to help you move issues forward? Is there anything that we can do?
Yeah. So there's two issues that I'm going to ask for your help, not right now, but, and again, I'm going to do this. Right now, I want to move the police force. I need a number from our police chief on what we need to hire over the next year to 3 years. I will not go into details, but we are woefully behind in the planned Chandler police officers. There's nights, ladies and gentlemen, where some of the beats in Chandler are not covered. And I'll leave it at that. We have sex crimes that are not being solved. We have cyber crimes that are not being solved. It just seems like it's a penny pinching idea here, and I'm done with it. I'm bringing forward a motion, and if it means raising property tax or something, we're going to get more police officers and firefighters on the streets of Chandler. And so at the time, I will let you folks know what needs to be done, and mostly it's going to be emails and calling the council members and supporting this issue. On sustainability, once I get my plan together, I think we're looking at about 4 to 5 months. Then we're going to go ahead and have your input on that. And we want you folks to weigh in on that and let the council know how important it is. Send an email. You can send it to mayor and council at chandleraz.gov, and I'll put that in the box. Send an email. Tell them this is important. The police and fire is important, and sustainability issues are important to us. And I think they do listen. Eventually, they'll listen. Trust me.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for working for the city of Chandler and the residents thereof. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to AJ. AJ has been attending a lot of the Independent Redistricting Commission meetings. So AJ is our conduit to that particular process. And we ask him to give us an update on where that is. Just quickly for everybody who does not know, Arizona is one of the few states that their next lines for congressional districts and within the legislature are going to be drawn by an independent redistricting commission, not by a legislature. That is all political. So we're very fortunate with that. We still have upheld those laws even up to the Supreme Court. So it's something we should be proud of, but one we cannot ignore. And so AJ is going to fill us in on what's going on there as we go into this process that happens every 10 years after a census. AJ?
Thank you, Carol, and good evening to amazing LD17 Democrats. My name is Ajlan Kurdoglu. You can call me AJ, and I'll be your Independent Redistricting Commission point person. Let me share this. We have a little slideshow here for you. You can see that?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Well, as you know, every 10 years we have census, and each state gets to redraw their congressional and legislative district based on the population changes. Every state gets new number of House of Representative number. So this year, and this process is done mostly on other states by the state legislatures. And if you can imagine, just like Carol mentioned, that has some drawbacks. And Arizona is lucky on that department because in 2000, by passing Proposition 106, we pushed that responsibility to our Independent Redistricting Commission. And the mission of this commission is basically redraw the legislative and congressional borders, not the other ones, and based on the one person, one vote concept. And there are several criteria that they're going to pay attention when they do that job. And the first two of those are federally mandated, and those districts, they have to be, and the way they are redraw should comply with US Constitution and Voting Rights Act, and they should be in equal population. And then afterwards, you're looking at, they should be in shape, compact and contiguous, so you don't get those weird shape of districts that you see in other states or some other neighborhood which is totally separate from your own district. And it should also pay attention, respect to the communities of interest. And that is the part that we will be more involved, because the community of interest can be based on anything you can imagine. It could be based on religion, could be based on ethnic, it could be based on other interests that you might have. It could be based on school or school district, and it can even be economical. And then afterwards, the other two criteria that they have to pay attention, it's about being by the city, town, county boundaries, you know, not obey them as much as they can. And the last thing is to have some competitive district. That could be a little bit surprising. You may expect that creating competitive district must be the first thing, but it is actually the last thing they will pay attention to. And while this criteria is not going to be detrimental to the other stuff. So in Arizona, our commission is basically consists with 5 commissioners. 4 of them are appointed by the state legislator, the leaders of the legislation. As you can see over here, David Mell by Rusty Bowers, Douglas York, appointed by Senate President Karen Fann. Our Democrats, Sharon Lerner by then Minority Leader Charlene Fernandez, and Senate Minority Leader Senator Bradley appointed Derek Watchman. And those 4 got together in early January, and they interviewed 5 independents. And among those 5, they picked after their interviews, and they were all done in a public forum. They picked Erica Neuberg, and a connection to us. She lives in Chandler. She is a psychologist, graduated from ASU, as you can tell. And she's an independent, but she's not novice on politics. She is a national board member of APAC, American Israel PAC. And they also elected Derek Watchman as their vice chair. So the next important point is the timeline. So this is where the trouble begins, because when you look at it on the left, in 2011, by July, August, they had their inputs from residents, and next one, you will see that by August, they had their grid maps. And this year, unfortunately, because of the early interruptions or by the Trump administration, their interference with the census process, and then, unfortunately, the biggest reason is the COVID-19 pandemic, we are delayed. The time frame, basically, and this came out a couple of weeks ago, US Census Bureau will send the information necessary, all this data, to the states and to the state legislature, and in our case, to the commission. They were planning to do this March 31st. New deadline is September 31st. That's a 6 months delay. So in best case scenario, if they receive that in September 31st, they will do the preliminary draft, I should say, of districts, if you're lucky, by late October, November. And then in the best case scenario, we will have our maps February, all the way February of the next year, 2022. So you might ask, what are they gonna do during this 6 months period? Right now, the commission is actually putting the ground rules, I should say, how they're gonna move forward, other than getting their basic, hey, let's get our laptops and cell phones. The most important part that they are paying attention right now, it's the hiring staff. They're gonna hire an executive director and the staff below that director. But also after that, 2 important points, they have to get a mapping consulting firm plus one or two, they haven't decided yet, they are still discussing that as we speak, or today actually they did, a couple of law firms, because this issue, it's going to be discussed on the court system, no matter what kind of maps they put forward. So, but the good news is, today on their discussion, they know about the delay, of course. They're not going to just sit down and do this job, but they are going to also start early to hear from the communities, even before they get the census data. And this is the part that we will like to get ready, create our groups who can testify about the communities of interest. How we want this district to be shaped, which neighborhoods to be included. Those are the stuff that we will be testifying, as all of us, necessary when time comes. But as of now, we don't know. They haven't decided yet when they're gonna start hearing and in which shape or form from the public. So those are the things that they are working on. And they have a new website. They just did it, as you see, irc.az.gov. And their meetings right now, they do it once a week on Tuesdays. They start at 9 a.m. Actually, next week, for some reason, they're going to do it at noon. And you can watch that on their YouTube channel live or afterwards if you want to. It's Independent Redistricting Commission. And you can also get the links on their website.
So being that we have about 10 minutes left, I'm going to be very respectful of your time here. So I'm going to go through this business pretty quick. Just an update on our service projects that we've been working on. Last month, we spent an evening with United Food Bank. There was, I don't know, about 16, I think, showed up. And Laura sent me the numbers. We did 9,500 pounds of food that we packed into emergency bags. Some of us tried harder than others. AJ was carrying 2 bags in each arm at several points in the night, so he was an overachiever. But we had a really good time, and we basically put about 8,000 meals out there for people to eat just in a matter of a few hours. So I'd recommend it to anybody who's interested. Laura's on here. I don't remember what our next date is. I didn't have that on the calendar. Do we have that date yet?
Yes, it's March 30th, but unfortunately it's full. But there will be another one coming up in April.
Okay. So that's a good thing. And we're looking for other opportunities as well, because we do know that one's pretty popular. So we're looking for those as well. But anyway, it's a fun time. I recommend it to anyone. And even, we have other food banks here, and it's pretty much this, you pretty much do the same things. So, there's Matthews Crossing. What are some other ones that I'm missing?
AZ Send.
There you go. So there's others too that we can try to set up some ongoing relationships as well. But it's a really, our first 2 months with United Food Bank has been really great. And thank you, Laura, for getting us involved in that. We will be adding some new things. We have some people looking into, and I think Laura again, actually, Habitat for Humanity. We're looking into that. And if you have any other suggestions, please let us know. There you go, Feed My Starving Children. That's a great one too. I've done that one as well, and that's really fun. And also kids can do that as well. So for United Food Bank, I think they said you had to be 5 years old to start, and they have special days where they will work with the kids a little bit more. But Feed My Starving Children, I've done that as part of a church group, and they allow kids very young in there too. And so my kids, we brought them down many times to do that. And I think they got something out of it. So That's a really good opportunity. So we're looking into those. And if you have any other opportunities that you see that we can do some work in the community, send them our way and we'll add them to our calendar. So as far as community outreach, everybody knows that as a board, we're focusing really heavy on reaching out into different communities that we haven't, well, I'll just say we haven't done as well in the past reaching out to. And so we're really focused on that this time around. It's my #1 priority. And being so, I've appointed AJ to be part, or actually lead that committee. And I'm going to just have AJ talk about it for a moment, because there are some current needs that we do have, and I'll let AJ address that.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Welcome again.
I appreciate it. Yes, AJ is here. I'll be real quick. This year, as Steve mentioned, our goal with very, very big emphasis to reach out, to talk to the people of our district and every single community that lives and works in Chandler area. And my motto is, basically our motto is, no community left behind, no group left unheard. And as Democrats, we should hear from the community groups and listen to their issues, their desire and needs. So far to that goal, we already start talking to East Valley and AACP. We talked to our conversation with disabled community, and Cody has been a wonderful information source for us. We opened the door to reach out to Hispanic community. And so right now, we are looking some new volunteers to join us in this community. I know last time I mentioned this, Judith and Roxy already volunteered, so I didn't forget about them. So they are already in. Please reach out to me. I will write down my email. And so we want to move full speed ahead in this endeavor. That will help us. That's our job. That's what we have to do as a group of Democrats. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and just one thing that I read today it's pretty shocking statistic. It was this, and my numbers may be a little off because I don't have it in front of me, but in Maricopa County, 98,000 Democrats didn't vote in this last election. Of those 98,000 Democrats that didn't vote, 63,000 actually had a partisan score of over 80 plus in favor of Democrats. So and we lost a lot of really close county races, and we're going to make sure that doesn't happen again. And the best way to do that is to be reaching out to every single community in our neighborhoods and in our cities. I think we're on a really positive trajectory there. And AJ, thank you for leading it, because it's actually it's a lot of work. It's a lot of good work, but it's
thank you
for
a
lot of work. The Women in Blue event, that's the American Federation of Democratic Women. Carol, do you have any more information on that? I didn't have a lot.
Yes, it will be a Zoom meeting from, I think the time is there from 6 to 8. We will be having a number of different Democratic leaders. I know Katie Hobbs is speaking, and a number of the representatives from across the state will be talking. So we'll be talking to the ladies about what is going on at the legislature, what is going on statewide, especially with our elections, and of course the upcoming national conference on the National Federation of Democratic Women will be in June, so they'll be speaking about that convention as well. So,
okay, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other points of interest on this calendar, just there is already scheduled RTS training with civic engagement. So those are some specific times for you if you'd like to participate in that. And we are having a night on Tuesday, March 16th. That is all about becoming a PC and what that means, and and what role a PC plays in our organization and in the district. So we're going to have an information session, which this is our first one. I'm thinking that we're probably going to do this on a semi-frequent basis, meaning probably monthly, so that anybody who's interested in becoming a PC, they'll have a place and a time to go talk about that. So that's going to be on the 16th. And also Thursday is not on here. That would be Thursday, March 18th. Deborah, is that right? She's probably on mute.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure I promoted that correctly. And by the way, please come to this. It was so much fun. We had a great time.
We had a great time.
I mean, we talked about other stuff that weren't even politics, but it was a lot of fun. And unfortunately,
and you don't have to drink.
Yeah, you don't have
to drink.
Yeah, I was like, what if you're underage?
and if you
I'm at college, you're not supposed to care about that. But
if you do drink, you're at home right now. So you know what? So anyway, that's on the 18th. And then the general meeting is on the 6th. And that's where we will be having that election.
For the 16th, for the PC training, is that also for new PCs, or is that just for new information
PCs? Yeah, so if you know of anyone that's interested in becoming a PC, and by the way, I've already appointed, I just did my count today, and I think I've appointed 10 PCs. Some don't count really, because Jennifer was one of them who moved to a new location, and some were remaining to be appointed after when I first got elected into this position. So it's a good 10 new people that we have, and we're trying to build up that roster. So if you know of anybody that is interested in becoming a PC, just send them our way. You can send them to the website. There's a PC interest form that they can fill out, and you can get us that information, and one of us on the board will be contacting them. I've been doing it so far just because I'm not employed at the moment, so it's pretty easy for me to meet all the new people that have come to us.
What if you are a new PC and you don't really know what you're doing?
Well, then you show up. It's totally about making you comfortable in your position and learning what it's all about.
Okay.
So other than that, does anybody else have anything else to add? I know we're about 5 minutes over, so. No?
I've got a quick comment.
Yeah, Phil.
I would second what Steve said earlier. Once you get that civic engagement beyond voting news bulletin, they make it very easy to voice your opinion with that RTS and bill status inquiry. So great. It's a great opportunity to get involved.
Thanks, Phil. Yep. Yeah, and the other thing too is, and Jennifer will tell you that the comments that you make on these different bills, they are looked at, and especially if you're a constituent. So yeah, so if you haven't done it, I totally recommend going to that, and so we can support Jennifer and all of other Democrats in office right now. That's it for me. If anybody, and again, I want to thank Eric Shelley for joining us tonight, and I will be at his meeting coming up in a couple weeks, and I think that's it.
Okay.
All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
AJ, I don't see everybody. Is it AJ and Eric? That'll work.
That'll work. AJ first, Eric seconded.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
No objection.
It's been 2 hours.
All right, thank you everyone, and I appreciate all of you, and again, we got a lot of hard work to do over the next several months, but we're going to build this organization up, and we're going to have fun doing it, and I appreciate all of you, so have a great evening.